Welcome to The Zip, episode number 2. This is a podcast here to talk about the Vermont legislature from the perspective of two newbies. I'm Johnny Gifford. I'm the producer from BCTV. This is a collaboration with BCTV and some of our local delegation. I'd like to welcome our two star members of the show here. Once again, Ian Goodnow representing Wyndham 9. Hello, Ian.
Howdy.
Oh, boy.
Hey.
There you go. Good.
And Zon Eastis representing Wyndham 1. Hi, Zon.
How are you doing?
I'm good. You seem a little stuffy today. You okay?
Yeah,
Are you sick, Zon?
I got a little bit sick right after. Well, actually, I was sick on the last day of the legislature. I was wearing a mask all day, and then it got worse. I think I'm better.
Is it because you were just giving it your all for
Oh,
your
there you go.
constituents?
That's totally it.
Yes.
I give it my all to the very end.
That's right. We all know you do. And before we get too into the weeds here, I do want to acknowledge that Stardust is our opening music, composed by Clark Hubbard, performed by the Vanderbilt Percussion Group, recorded and produced by Continuous Motion Productions. So this is episode number 2 of The Zip. How do we feel episode number 1 went, fellows?
Ooh, what a good question. Well, it has over 200 views.
That's right.
So that's pretty great.
We're royalty now. We're famous.
Yeah.
We're famous.
What did you think, Zon?
Well, I liked it, actually. I thought it was pretty good in the sense that for a first one, and we don't even know what we're doing,
Yeah.
I thought it was pretty good. And I think it's the feedback I got was people liked it. So, yeah, people having a good time.
And we're just trying to, improve and make ourselves better, I think, as we go, since none of us know what we're doing.
Yeah.
Correct.
And I think that, I like the format. I like the basic premise that we're here to talk about our legislative experience and help maybe folks in the community understand a little bit more about what goes on at the legislature with our attempts to understand it. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. And it will be good to see as we move into the fall and get ready for the next session too. I'd love to invite guests on at some point. I think that would be really cool.
We'll have to add a bunch more mic arms on this table somehow.
Yeah,
we'll make it work. We have a bigger table. We'll make it work.
Yeah. For those, the behind the scenes, it's a lot of time setting up these mic arms to not block anybody's, view anymore.
Right, exactly.
So I want to talk about your visit to the State House earlier this week. Since the session, you're in session,
Yes.
but the session ended, right? You're on break for like a week, 2 weeks maybe, and then you go back because there's bills that still need to be addressed that are just sort of lingering after the regular session ends.
Right.
Yeah.
So tell me about that.
Yeah. So just to set the stage for that, my understanding is it's a little odd the way that we did it. Usually the budget is the very last bill that is voted on the last day of the session. And then the governor comes and speaks whenever that vote ends, which could be pretty late in the evening, which would have been for this session, May 30th. But because we still had at least one large bill, the education bill, to work on, we didn't have that governor's speech, and we delayed it till what's called the veto session, which was just this last Monday and Tuesday for additional time to work on that bill. So there were no there was nothing done in the veto session around vetoes, just around the education bills.
So that time is set aside in case there are vetoes, but it's not exclusive to just, overriding vetoes or whatever.
Right.
I didn't realize that.
No, I think we'd been told from the very start that to hold this time in case there were vetoes we needed to deal with.
Yeah.
And in fact, there were a couple of vetoes that the governor presented, and we chose not to deal with them. I mean, it was chosen that we wouldn't deal with them. I guess that means we weren't sure we could get the votes to override the governor.
Sure.
His signature. So we didn't really have a veto session, but so we ended up having that space available that we could use when we were all planning to come back anyway.
Which also allowed for the committee of conference, which is the kind of like subcommittee of the legislature to deal with the education bill, to meet between the last day of the sort of regular session on May 30th till this last Monday, for the whole body to then come together and look at what the committee conference came up with.
I see. So the conference committee is like a subcommittee of the legislature, you're saying. So that's made up of like House and Senate people from
three
different
of each.
committees. I see.
So whenever a bill passes, let's take the education bill, but it could be any number of them. Whenever a bill passes, there's commonly a House version and then there's a Senate version, because each of us have to deal with each of the bills, and we get the copy of the other body. They get ours, we get theirs, and then there's always some changes that are made. And if those bills pass those bodies and there's not complete agreement, 100% agreement, then there has to be a committee of conference to hammer out a compromise.
I see.
Or the bill dies.
Or the bill dies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then in the committee of conference, it's fun to be explaining this as freshman legislators, because I'm sure we're getting some of this wrong. But
you're also like, ooh, I know how this works.
Yeah, exactly. I get to like totally explain this to Johnny. The committee of conference is held like bookend to the two bills, like, so whatever came out of the Senate, whatever came out of the House, the differences between those two bills are sort of like what the committee of conference is held to change. So they can't sort of together build a brand new thing that's not what those two bills that came out.
They have to use what's already there.
Yeah, and that's it. And so, and in fact, if you do try to go outside of it, there can be consequences like actually killing the bill based on a sort of objection.
Because it invalidates it at that point,
Yeah.
I would imagine.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. We can chart the education bill for that reason in this way, because there was, during the committee of conference work after the last session closed on May 30th, and then before we come back, the committee was meeting, and there was an attempt to offer material or policy that was outside the realm of what either committee had done. And it took days for them to come to an agreement, an understanding that they couldn't do that. I mean, they all knew they couldn't do that. I mean, everybody knows, but they were still trying to push the edges to try to get certain, it's a power trip. It really is a power trip. And so it was pretty interesting to watch that happen. And in the end, when their report, they have to present a report. When the report came back, and we were asked to vote yes or no. Those are only two options. We can debate it, but we can't amend it any further. It's the way it is. And so when it came back in the House, first it had to go to the Senate because it was H.454, means it was a House bill, so we get to look at it last. If it was S, then the Senate would have
For Senate.
less. Yeah.
Oh, gotcha.
Got it. Yeah. So anyway, when it went to the Senate, one senator stood up and tried to knock the whole thing off the rails because of did a point of order claiming that there were elements of the report that were outside the area that really should have been compromised. So the Senate had to do a procedure in order to be able to continue moving forward with the bill.
And what is that procedure? Like looking at the language of the bill and and making a judgment call?
Basically, there's a finding that the point of order is well taken, that it was outside of the scope, and so that was found to be objectionable. And so the Senate had to rule to basically, as a full body, decide to sort of operate outside of the normal rules and still take up the committee of conferences. The House did the same thing. We had to do the same thing because that same question was brought up when we brought up the bill, and we had to do the same vote to suspend our rules to take up the committee of conferences report, even though there were things that were outside of the scope. So when we just presented it and said you can't go outside of the scope, there's still ways that you can go outside.
It's basically if everyone's like, yeah, we're chill with this. Then
It's pretty strict. I mean, it requires a 3/4.
Yeah, so it's a big 3/4 of the full body. So for us, that was we have 150 people in the House, so it's
like 115 or something.
Yeah, I'm a
like
lawyer, so I don't do math.
Yeah. Well, and it's also all this stuff. It's just crazy. But it's not 3/4 of 150. It's 3/4 of the people that are there voting on that day.
Right.
So the numbers can change every single day.
Yeah.
And so let's talk about the bill itself. We're talking so much about the procedure. And what is this education bill that we're talking about here?
Yeah, Zon, what's the education?
Yeah. Well, it's
give me the footnotes.
Transformative.
Transformative. It's going to require that the state it's going to take several years to accomplish. The bill that we're looking at that got passed is basically just a blueprint for the next while, for the next 3 to 4 years. There are very few things that say have to change right now. It's all we're going to do. We intend to do this, like have larger school districts. We intend to impose class size minimums. And every one of these intends to do are held up by a contingency or a study or something. So it's not as if anything's going to happen just because we said so. It's all going to be based on what we presume to be the good evidence that's been coming forward over the last number of years. That will be extended through studies and research. And then if there's a strong enough finding in the situation, then we'll move forward.
Okay, so what does that entail exactly?
Basically a bunch of off-ramps. So if, at any one of those contingency steps, we don't make it through it with an agreement of the full of the legislature and the governor, then the bill, like the movement in transforming the education system in Vermont, probably will stall out. So what does it actually look like? It means basically each of these things, school districts, numbers, the class size minimums, some of the weighting stuff is decided, some of it will be, there's more to be done in it. Each of those things will come back to the legislature to be decided. And so there's like a lot of, there are going to be a lot more difficult discussions to be had. And I think one of the things that'll be interesting to see is who voted for it this right now versus who will support it in the next phase.
Exactly.
And will there be people who kind of flip, who are now more interested in supporting it versus those who maybe supported it initially, but then now that they see where it's going, don't anymore.
Yeah. It's interesting. I mean, the bill and the conference committee, well, the governor, let's go back. The governor presented his proposal way back.
I remember that. I think earlier this year, 5 districts. That was sort of the big news, the headline. That's really all I know about it.
And foundation formula, the notion that the way we currently, just quickly to say this, the way Vermont currently pays for education is that school boards and school districts develop their own budgets. All those budgets, all of them, are then brought up to Montpelier, they're all added up, and it's the legislature's responsibility to find out a way to pay for all of those things. No questions asked, pretty much. Just here's a budget, here they all are, it adds up to this, find the money.
And in theory, it was approved by the voters, I would assume, in most municipalities.
Yes.
So at that point, it's like
theoretically
approved.
But what it has led to over the years is that there are some districts that really want to limit spending on education for all sorts of reasons, not because they want to harm the children or anything like that, because they're interested in keeping taxes down, because they can't hire amazing teachers, so they don't build big budgets and things like that. So there's this huge numbers of inequities in our system currently. And so the foundation formula would essentially flip it so that every student in Vermont, no matter where they are, pre-K through maybe even community, what are they? CTEs.
CTEs.
Yeah, what's that mean? Boy, what
Certificate of Technical Education.
Technical education.
I think it's something like that.
Yeah, CTEs. Yeah. Anyway, though every student will cost a certain amount of money, around $15,000.
Plus or minus with like little, additions and weights based on individual student need.
So minus IEPs, you'd expect
it'd be a plus probably an IEP would add.
Well, right. Yeah. An IEP would add that, but like for the student who's not on an IEP, like this bill is saying basically this is how much it costs per pupil, across the state.
And this gets back to sort of like, to take it a little bit, we're getting we're very specific, which is important, but also more on a broader point. Vermont, we, based on a Supreme Court decision, Brigham, we have a constitutional mandate to provide equal quality education to every Vermont student. And one of the things that became very clear to me over this last session as the House and the Senate and the governor have grappled with this big bill and this big decision around education is that we're not satisfying that constitutional mandate currently. There is massive inequality and inequity for Vermont students, very much around rural communities and lower income communities where students are not getting the same quality of education and the same opportunities as other students in Vermont. So we talk about money, which is of course a huge part of this, and we talk about how long a kid's going to be on a school bus. All these things, they matter, but also what also matters is that kids right now in our state are not all getting access to the same quality education, and that's one of the reasons why we need to take it up. And because I think there's a lot of discussion right now around, like, why are you guys even doing this? Like, we just want our taxes to go down. Like, we didn't ask you to do this big thing. And the reality is this will help with taxes, but in the long term, but also this is important for our Vermont students now.
Yeah. I think it's really important. There are a lot of people that are very concerned about and worried about their community school, and schools are the center of communities. We
They're
get
right.
that. They're absolutely right about
Especially
that.
a lot of these smaller schools, people hold them very near and dear to their hearts. In
And
these
as
small
well,
communities.
it's very Vermont,
Right.
and it feels right and it's good. And a lot of people make the assumption that this bill is going to pretty quickly close some schools in the state. And my sense is it's not going to do that immediately, and that's not its intention. Its highest intention is to provide good quality education to all students in the state of Vermont at a price that all Vermonters can balance in a balanced way afford. And that's not something we have at this moment. Yeah.
Sounds pretty great.
It sounds pretty great. But
when you say it like that, I'm in.
Yeah. But so the nice thing is,
Thinking about the comments.
yeah. I can see what's
Don't roast us.
Yeah. What's going to happen here, and I think Ian said it earlier, there are lots of off-ramps.
Yeah.
We're not done considering how this is going to work. There's no foregone conclusion at this moment.
I'm sure next session you're going to be continuing to sort of unwrap this and see what splits off from this bill.
Exactly.
I assume are there like other bills that will come from this bill, or is this sort of something, is it more of a working group or a committee that works on it and under the idea that this is good to go?
I know. I can imagine one element that will require adjustment going into the future is how do communities cope with the notion that either they're going to be closing a school or they're going to be expanding the school that they have in order to accommodate other students in some way or other. I don't know what that means. So there's going to be construction issues or reuse, adaptive reuse issues. Yeah. And so the state, I feel very strongly that the state needs to be in support of communities as they do that work. It's not okay to just say, okay, do this and leave everybody alone, which is, I think, how some communities have felt in the past with previous education bills.
But I think how this bill was written and how it passed is that we're going to be taking it back up. It's going to be right back with us next session. So we're not going to be able to sort of like leave it alone, which is a good thing in some senses, but also it also means that there's going to be really hard conversations just like continuing into the future, which is what we need to do. But it took up a lot of air, right, in the State House this year.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
I do want to say one more thing, and that's
that's why we have a podcast.
It's your podcast is on.
No, you can't. You're done.
It's all the time we have.
Yeah.
No, one more thing that I'd like to point out is that people may, listening to the very end of the conversation, are saying, well, this organization was against this and this organization was against this. And the real truth is that all those organizations have switched sides multiple times in this discussion from the beginning all the way through the kinds of morphs. And what that means to me is that the committees were listening to the outside communities and really paying attention and trying to build a bill that was really going to go forward in a great way. And unfortunately, the Committee of Conference work put some real twists in things that forced some of the organizations that were so deeply supportive of this, like the Principals Association or the School Boards Association, and they felt like they needed to step away from support because of some actions that happened in the committee of conference. And my hope is that those things we have opportunities still to iron those out and straighten those out in the future. Does it make sense?
Yes, absolutely. No, it does. And that work that you were just talking about in the committee of conference was moving this in a bipartisan way to get it to a place where it could get through the Senate, get through the House, and get the governor's signature, right? And, I definitely, one of the things I heard when I was campaigning was interest from at least some members of my community for the government to work together.
Yeah.
For us to work with people across the aisle and with the governor to try to affect real change in Vermont in a positive direction. And so I guess I'm going to hold my breath if we've done that or not, but I at least think we're on the path. So.
Yeah, the fact that the governor came before before the committee of conference was done with their work and committed to signing the bill going forward, that was unusual. Normally we don't hear anything about it. He doesn't comment or anything. Like there's another bill that we could talk about that there was hope he would have signed it. He didn't sign it, but we didn't know that until it was all the way on his desk.
Yeah,
we didn't know for sure. But this one, he came forward and said, "I will sign this." And so that's collaboration.
That's the true spirit of trying to work together.
And I mean, there's a million steps inside all of that collaboration,
of course,
and a million ways to interpret all of that. Yes, granted, but in the big picture, there is some collaboration, and leadership has been remarking how unusual that is. So,
and a sharp contrast to the last biennium where the Democrats had a supermajority. Where, I'm not to really comment on that other than that looked very different than sort of a bipartisan bill that came out of the legislature for education this year.
Yeah, I'm sure the conference committee would have come to very different conclusions if, depending on a Democratic supermajority or more split.
Right.
I mean, there were a lot more Republicans voted to the legislature this biennium.
Yes.
Yeah.
I guess we're kind of seeing that moving through.
Yeah.
How do you actually get things passed now?
Yeah.
Like the landscape has changed.
Yeah. Yes, and while there wasn't a roll call on the education bill,
he's bringing it up.
No. But it's interesting. We know that there were a lot. It's interesting that there was a lot more. It wasn't along party lines. The vote was not along party lines. It wouldn't have turned out the way it did.
And neither was the discussion about education from January till June. It was not party line. It was it's geographic, it's experience. It's not just you're a Democrat or you're a Republican, how you vote.
Right.
It's quite an interesting issue, and I hope that over the coming years it continues to unravel and develop to a point where we're just best serving the kids. It's all for the kids.
It's all for the kids.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, it's a good.
Well, man, that took up most of the episode.
Oh boy.
Wow.
I mean, it's a beast,
Yeah.
It's a whale of a bill, so I get it.
And and I really wanted to say that I shout out to Angela, Angela Arsenault, who's a rep from Williston, that the big education bill, really important, starts the boulder moving for transformative change in Vermont. We voted a second bill on Monday night, which was the miscellaneous education bill. In that was phone-free schools. And that is a really, really important bill that is going to much more immediately change Vermont schools in a positive direction.
Wow.
Basically, bell to bell, no cell phones or electronic devices for kids.
Wow, that's something the legislature took up and went for.
And we did it.
Wow.
And it was bipartisan.
Yeah.
And that's really cool. And that's the kind of bill that I ran to vote for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So anyhow, sorry to.
So that's
I think it's important because that
that
just happened like at the very end after this big momentous other bill that we voted on.
And it wasn't a veto, right? Like
Nope.
This is just something left over that the body decided to take up.
It was kind of I don't know I'm too much of a newbie to understand all of it, but I think there are strategic reasons to hold multiple bills that are from the same. So they're both education bills, in case stuff happens.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, well, so as Ian mentioned at the beginning, the normal path is that the budget is the very last bill that's passed. Normally, is what they tell us, and the bill just before it is the yield bill, what we call the yield bill, which is the bill that articulates what taxes or property taxes are going to be for everybody in Vermont, and those usually come right at the very end of the session. Well, we did those 6 weeks ago, a long time ago. Those were done, and we've been doing all sorts of other work since then. So this has been a very unusual year. At least that's what people tell us.
Yeah, as I say, for us, it's just our first year.
They say that every year.
Yeah, feels normal.
Yeah,
I don't know.
That's, I mean, like being a representative of the Vermont Access Network who works with the legislature. I've been hearing that. Yeah, I know, right? I've been hearing that year after year from our lobbyists and from our legislators who we're working with to get bills passed. They're like, this is a very unusual bill for you. Like, I'm like, is every bill like this? Or
yeah. I think everything is.
Yeah.
So you were actually there for a veto as well, a veto override, I think, right? H91, is that right?
Well,
this is a veto? Or?
Yeah, it was a potential. It could have been a veto override, but that would have required 100 votes from the House, and there isn't enough. There weren't. Because on the day, normally we have 150 people in the house, and I think on the day we were there were 130 or something like that.
135 something.
Yeah, so it would. I don't know what the number would have been, but there weren't the numbers available. That wasn't even publicly stated. It just didn't come up. I was very disappointed, I must say, because I'm on the Human Services Committee, and I'd worked for a long time with my committee, was part of that work on developing this really another transformative bill in dealing with housing and homelessness in the state of Vermont. And it was a really, I believe, a very well-crafted bill, and the governor vetoed it. And he puts out a statement every time he vetoes anything, and that's available out there. And
there's like a press release, email for that. Like I get emails about that.
Yeah. And I think just like education, even though H91 was vetoed, the root issues that H91 was addressing are going to be here next. We are going to take up.
What is like the short version of what that entailed? H91.
What it was going to do?
Yeah, you should.
Well, so the way
Ken Zon explained this in 30 seconds.
Most people are probably very familiar in Vermont, especially in Brattleboro. People are very familiar with a hotel motel program,
general assistance,
where homelessness, general assistance is called, where people got a voucher to sleep in a hotel for one night. And they could do that 80 times a year or a season. I don't even know the answers to that. But and it was and depending on the severity of the weather, you could do more or less. You could get more or fewer vouchers. So there are lots of problems with a program like that. First of all, it was just a handout, essentially. Here, go sleep. And what this program, the H91 program intended to do was to sort of transform that program into a human-centered, community-based program, so that when someone came to sleep in a hotel room, sure, they're going to get their hotel room or whatever housing there is available. That's in Brattleboro, maybe is what we would use some of the time, but there are also homes where people could stay. I mean, specific homes built for that sort of thing, shelters. And in addition, any person that came in would be entered into a program where they would be tied with services that they need. Many people that are homeless have many other kinds of issues, like they need oxygen, or they have walking issues, or they have mental issues that they need addressed. And those currently, by the current program, the general assistance program, there's no connection between the sleeping somewhere overnight and being then brought together with systems. So the idea is to try to get people into a program so that we can move them from the situation they're in. If they want to be moved, we can move them from the situation they're in into more permanent housing. Housing is the big basis for most of Vermont's problems. We all up and down, not just for low income or homeless people, but for the entire spectrum of the state economic spectrum. Housing is a major problem in the state of Vermont, and we've done a lot to do that. So this bill dovetailed with the housing bills that have been going and trying to provide more secure programming for people, services, in order to address people where they are.
And so bottom line, it got passed by the House and the Senate.
Yes.
Got vetoed, and it's just going to be sitting on the shelf until further notice.
It's dead.
Yeah.
So
sure.
now it'll just be, what can we do moving forward to try to come up with a new bill and a new solution that we can get signed.
Sure.
And
So probably, we may start again in the House or the Senate
no
may
idea.
start. I have no idea. But also, what's actually going to happen for the next while then will be led by the governor and his administration, and not by legislation. And so we don't know what that program could or will look like going forward. It might change because they want it to, or it might not. We just don't know.
Let's put a pin in that one for now.
Yeah, exactly. That's one to be watched.
Yeah, we probably can talk about that again at some point.
We probably could and should.
Yeah.
We should probably wrap up soon, but before we do, we got to introduce a new segment as we have to every start of the week.
Okay.
Yeah.
This one, I just want to hear from each of you briefly. What are you listening to? That could be anything. It could be music, a podcast, the sound of your own voice. I don't know. What are you listening to? Right
Yeah. Well, I just listened to a little orchestra called Juno.
Nice plug.
Wow.
It's I'm not going to try to explain it. Basically, Zon is a conductor and a composer. I don't know.
No, not a composer.
Just a conductor. Okay.
dabble in composing.
I wasn't sure. I just thought maybe it was like if you conduct, you compose sort of thing.
Yeah. Well, I have done some composing.
Well, there we go.
Okay.
All right.
The truth comes out.
The truth comes out. You're just being humble.
I don't put myself out there. I'm not a composer.
So you were listening to Juno.
Yeah. They had a performance up at was it at
It's called Person's Auditorium.
at in Marlboro, and it was really wonderful, and it was really well attended.
You were there in person?
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
And it was just the other weekend, and I would definitely encourage people to. Do you guys have any other performances coming up?
Well, the next one we do is October the 12th on Indigenous Peoples Weekend.
Yeah.
We traditionally do a concert then. So yeah.
Yeah. So that was really wonderful. Well done.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, that's what I was listening to.
Yeah.
Nice. And those are usually available on BCTV.
Oh,
I think
secondary plug.
sometimes we make them available. I'm not sure this one's going to be made available. I have to listen to it. I haven't listened
All
to
right,
anything
fair
yet.
enough. Fair
Yeah.
enough. Well, Zon, what have you been listening to?
Well, I've been listening in prep for the concert.
We've all just been listening.
But I'm already on where I've gone past that now. So no, I guess I would say that I'm listening to podcasts about the current situation in the federal government and the way things are going, and just listening to people's opinions about how things are going in this country. Trying not to be real focused. I'm trying to listen to a lot of different opinions out there to try to get a balance of things. I'm sorry that we're so in this country right now, but I think that
for those listening who aren't watching, Zon made sort of a motion with his hands away from each other.
Yeah.
Thank you for the helpful audio description.
Yeah.
Polarized.
We need to hear about it. Yep.
Yes.
So anyway, I've just been listening to some podcasts. I try to do that and make sure that I'm up to speed with what's happening.
Up to speed, but not experiencing terminal existential dread.
I'm old enough that I know when to turn it off. I don't get overcome.
What are you listening to, Johnny?
Yeah, Johnny.
Well, I just checked out this morning a new album from this band I like called Held by Trees. And so if anyone here is familiar with Talk Talk, they're like a band that was pretty famous in the 80s, led by Mark Hollis. They were sort of this like kind of dancey, groovy pop band, and then they like sort of totally shifted gears and became really like long, drawn out, ambient sort of a thing with really beautiful storytelling in the songwriting and the lyrics. And then like the music industry was like, we hate this. It's not pop anymore. So they kind of died, but that music was just so beautiful and like underappreciated. And unfortunately, the lead person, Mark Hollis, passed away in like the 90s, I believe. And there's someone who's recently been carrying the torch of this music and this tradition, has gathered all of like the ensemble members of that band and has been releasing new music
Like
under
the
the direction of this
Whoa.
this new person and the original members and performers of the band Talk Talk.
Say the name again.
So Held by Trees is the
Held
name
by
of the
Trees.
artist. And so they just put out an album like a couple days ago, I think,
All
or last week.
All right.
And I checked it out this morning and I loved it. It was like great morning music, I think.
Oh, great. I'm going to check it out.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah,
Thanks.
you should.
Yeah.
That's great.
Thanks. Yeah. Good.
So that's our segment, and we talked a lot about policy. We talked a lot about procedure,
Pretty heavy
bills
duty.
and everything.
Heavy
We got in it.
duty.
It's a bit
Whoa,
longer,
my gosh.
but we got to leave our listeners and our watchers some time to let this digest a little bit. I think.
Yeah. Wow. Episode 2 done. Woo!
Here we go.
Thank you for watching the Zip this day, episode number 2. This is a podcast.
Good outro.
Yeah. Thanks, Ian. The Zip is a podcast to talk about the Vermont legislature from the perspective of two newbies. I'm Johnny Gifford. I'm the producer representing BCTV. Our outro music is Stardust, composed by Clark Hubbard, performed by the Vanderbilt Percussion Group, recorded and produced by Continuous Motion Productions. I hope you'll check us out on your podcast platform of choice. We're on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, Amazon, RSS, all that jazz, and many more. Feel free to leave us a review on one of those platforms so we can be really self-conscious about ourselves and also improve.
Do we have an email?
And we have an email. Thank you, Ian. The Zon Ian podcast at gmail.com. I'll say it again. The Zon Ian podcast at gmail.com. If you want to just leave us some feedback or tell us how much you like our bowling shirts.
Yeah, or if you have a question you want us to answer on the podcast, send it over.
Absolutely. Yeah, these questions don't write themselves. So.
Johnny's a busy guy.
Yeah. So again, thank you for tuning into the Zip episode 2, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.